This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.
Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of When Science Speaks. Today's episode is brought to you by Bayer Strategic Consulting in Washington, D.C., which helps scientists and engineers craft compelling communications to their most important stakeholders, whether it's policymakers, investors, or the public. And we are so privileged to have, it's such a great pleasure, we're so lucky actually to have Vinit Nijhawan on the show today. Vinit is a strategic visionary, he's a leader, and a mentor who's conceived and built technology organizations that have been acquired by Boeing, Motorola, Qualcomm, and other companies. He has particular expertise in computing, aerospace, telecom, medical devices, and other areas. And then he's decided to pivot his career from technology entrepreneur and CEO to helping other entrepreneurs with a focus on academia. He began teaching entrepreneurship at Boston University and subsequently led BU's Office of Technology Development. Vinit built on his experience at BU to launch a national academic IP monetization program with 40 institutions engaged. And then he started Waterloo Alumni Angels at his alma mater, which is the University of Waterloo, where he received his Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. Vinit is currently Executive Director of the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center and Massachusetts Association of Technology Transfer Offices, which are housed at the UMass President's Office. Welcome to the show, Vinit. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So you're currently serving as Executive Director of the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center, the MTTC, as I mentioned. Can you tell our listeners about the mission of the MTTC?
Of course. So the Mass Tech Transfer Center was established by Governor Romney back in 2003. And it was really designed to help all our academic research institutions in Massachusetts, there's about 34 of them, to do a better job of transferring their research into products and services to benefit society. Mm-hmm. And, as you know, Massachusetts is a hotbed of deep tech. Our academic institutions receive close to $7 billion a year in basic research funding from the federal government and others. And these institutions have been fantastic at translating this research to the market. Mm-hmm. And it's really because of a couple of reasons. One is what I call geographic serendipity. We have the densest innovation ecosystem of any city on the planet. Mm-hmm. And it just happened that way. It wasn't planned that way. It just happened that MIT and Harvard and Boston University and Northeastern University and Mass General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital and Boston Medical Center were all within 3-mile radius of each other. Mm-hmm. And the second reason is these institutions have been phenomenal at attracting philanthropy to help translate research. The Broad Institute with $1 billion, the Weiss Institute with $500 million, and so on and so forth.
Such a interesting thing, that proximity and the advantage there. So interesting as a Massachusetts, proud Massachusetts native. I of course couldn't agree with you more. Let me ask you about your own career. I mean, you're a successful serial entrepreneur. You've got deep experience building companies, exiting through acquisitions, for example. What skills have been central contributors to your success, would you say?
Well, I started my first company while I was an engineering student at University of Waterloo in Canada. And I realized pretty quickly that, designing and building a cool product is just not enough. One needs to have a better understanding of your customer. And so I think, one central skill that good entrepreneurs have are what I call empathy, right? So it's really understanding what your customer needs. And because if you understand what your customer needs, developing something and then having them purchase it becomes a much simpler sales process. The second is that one needs to be organizational, meaning you can't do it alone. And so it's really important to attract and retain other people who believe in your mission. And then I would say the third skill is something all entrepreneurs share, which is this doggedness to achieve the mission. But it's sort of a funny kind of doggedness. It's not, you don't want to be stubborn, but you want to be dogged and flexible at the same time. And then lastly, and I think this is probably the most important trait, I would call it rather than skill, is generosity, right? It's very important to be generous with your employees, with your family, with customers.
That is so important and insightful. Thank you for underscoring those things. And even the distinction that you make with this doggedness, but flexibility, that's probably not always easy to do, to be really determined and focused, but also willing to pivot based on what the market is telling you.
Exactly. And that is, I think, a unique skill that most skilled entrepreneurs have.
And actually, that's where I kind of wanted to go next, Vinit, which is, you've been a longtime mentor. You are a mentor, and as you're thinking about the many founders, leaders that you've mentored, that skill certainly has to be one so key. But I'm wondering, what sort of blind spots perhaps have you seen over and over again in mentees?
Yeah. So one. And in a way, one assumes that most mentees are first-time entrepreneurs, and they may have learned some business skills at college by taking entrepreneurship classes and stuff, which are important. Those are important tools to have. But the way I like to put it, and I don't know if this came from Buddhism or from where, but there are many paths to the truth. Right? But there's only one truth. And every entrepreneur has to walk their own path. I think it is the same when it comes to, starting a company, right? The truth is that you have to go develop a product customers want, and you have to figure out a way to make money, right? Make margins and make money. That's the truth. But there are many paths to it. And I think the only way for an entrepreneur to be is to walk their own path, right? So there are mentors that can sort of help you along the way, but in the end, you are walking your own path. This is especially true for academic spinouts. So, companies that are spun out from research that's done in a lab in a university, generally those spinouts are done not by the tenured faculty, but by their graduate students or postdocs. And those graduate students or postdocs, when they start a company, they really had no experience and usually don't have any business skills. And the only way is to take one step at a time and have the right kind of mentors around you. Now, I think it's also really important for mentors to understand the power dynamics, right, between a mentor and mentee, especially if the mentee is a woman, right? And so, being sort of sensitive to those power dynamics And what I like to say is the key to being a good mentor is not to play the chess game for your mentee, but to describe the rules of chess,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And this is important because, just like parenting, when your child is learning how to ride a bike, your instinct is to, make sure they don't fall and hurt themselves.
Right.
But the fastest way to get your child to ride a bike is just let them fall, right? A
Mm-hmm.
couple of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really well said. Let me ask you about your leadership at MTTC. But first, with respect to MTTC's, once again holding its flagship event, connecting scientific innovators, entrepreneurs, business leaders at the MALSI Plus 2020 conference, and that's going to be held virtually this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd love for you to share with our listeners information about the conference and its key elements. One thing that really stuck out for me was the curated matchmaking that I guess is a tradition at the event.
Yeah, so this is going to be the 13th annual MALSI event. Um, we were all set to do it again at the Cambridge Marriott this June 25th.
Mhm.
But obviously, with the pandemic, we've had to change plans. So we've now moved it a little later in the summer to August 20th, and we're planning for it to be a digital event. Having said that, we really want to replicate, the in-person experience. And so this event, brings together the academic spin-out community with entrepreneurs and investors. And so we have, a poster competition. We have some panels and some talking heads. We're going to try to do all of it. But more importantly, as you just alluded, we really think collaboration is a key. And last year, we sort of experimented with a partner, a Curious Reactor, who has this platform that actually curates the one-on-one partnering. Many events have one-on-one partnering, but they expect people to find each other, right? And then they provide the venue to do the one-on-one meetings. I think it's better to actually help those partnerships form ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to do that in a much bigger scale way because the digital platform lets us do it. So we're not only pivoting to digital, we're going to try to use a digital platform to make this event even more valuable by using the ability to create one-on-one collaborations or one in a few collaborations in a very active way.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's really an exciting way to do it and much better than maybe an organic situation. I want you to think, Vinit, if you could, about any kind of success stories that you've seen come out of the conference in the past.
Yeah, we've had many. And so remember, a big piece of MALSI is this poster competition where we, solicit and then choose last year the 30 best posters. And many of these poster winners have gone on to, form companies and get funded. Probably the most successful of them was a poster winner from the Weiss Institute at Harvard that went on to form Emulate, which is an organ on a chip company, which has raised several tens of millions of dollars of funding.
Really, really exciting. Now, I want to ask you, sort of as we wrap up, as an experienced leader in the startup world, many of our listeners are interested in entrepreneurship. And as you pointed out, a lot of this entrepreneurship is happening by postdocs, PhDs, who don't have any experience, but have interest and have talent. Looking at it from your perspective, I wonder if you could share any lessons that you've learned over the years that could help someone in that in that situation? Someone who is just starting out as an entrepreneur, or maybe just thinking about starting a company?
Absolutely. So, when I ran the tech transfer office at BU, I focused it on spin-outs. And we were able to spin out 8 venture-backed companies out of BU in five years that have raised over $350 million. So the number one way I did that is I created a mentoring program, and I brought in these entrepreneurial champions and connected them to the postdocs and the grad students, right? Now at the Mass Tech Transfer Center, we have launched a platform called MassVX that does that at scale. So we match these postdocs and grad students who are thinking about doing an academic spin out with an entrepreneurial champion. I highly encourage these academic entrepreneurs to think seriously about bringing on an entrepreneurial champion, somebody who's experienced at raising money and building companies, because when you do it for the first time, you could always learn on the job, and if you really want to do that, that's fine. You should go ahead and try to be the entrepreneurial champion yourself. But the way I think about it is that both these skills, the technical scientific skills that the inventor and postdoc brings, and the entrepreneurial business skills that an entrepreneurial champion brings, are both equally needed in these academic spin-outs. And so it's important, I think, for that postdoc to remain in that position, because it's going to increase the chances of success of that spin-out. And plus, they will learn from the entrepreneurial champion. And the next time around, if they really feel they want to be on the business side and not on the science side, they can do it.
Really interesting. Vinit Nijhawan, serial successful entrepreneur, executive director of the MTTC. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. So many really valuable, actionable nuggets, and also about the information regarding the upcoming conference. I really appreciate you taking the time out to be on the show.
Well, if this podcast does nothing but encourage one more postdoc or grad student to go do a spin out, then I feel like it's been valuable. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, Mark.
You're welcome. And listeners, thank you for being with us on this episode of When Science Speaks. And I hope you'll be back next time for another episode of When Science Speaks.
This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.